Hi, everyone. I'm Ali Vogel, and we are here today on Flexxible by Design with Idan Yaniv, the VP of Product Design at VIA. So today we are going to jump into Idan's background, talking all about mobility, the transformation that the mobility industry has had in the last period of time, and our favorite topic, what that transformation looks like with AI being at the forefront of product development. Idan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Ali, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Amazing, amazing. So, Idan, can you start off for the listeners that don't know you by giving a brief background of who you are?
Absolutely. So, at the past 4 years, I've been leading the design at VIA Transportation. Prior to this, I will maybe start from the beginning. I'm coming from a design background. Studied design for 4 years. During the summer semester between the third and fourth year, I co-founded with three others entrepreneurs a product. We launched a product, a mobile app that the goal was to connect and bring together backpackers around the world. Both me and the three other colleagues had a backpacking experience when we traveled back in. I traveled in Australia. They traveled in South America, and it was back in 2013 when all the geolocation started to boom and a lot of companies started to kick off and build products that were location based. And we really tried to think, how can we solve the problem of bringing backpackers together? When we experienced it, it was a very old school experience when you go to hotels, hostels, and you will write a note. I'm doing this. I'm traveling there. I'm pinning it on this kind of on this board. And maybe someone would call you. And we thought, how can we bring them together? Because we knew there's a lot of things that backpackers want to do together and to connect and to know people and travel. So we started to do this. It was very scrappy. It was my first time building digital product outside of my side of university. And we actually did this for a year and a half. During this time, we had a few thousand early adopters, users in South. It was, and the thing is that we realized at that point that we started to get some interest and some approaches from different hostels that wanted to collaborate, and we understood that our model was not based on this, and we need to do some serious pivot in order to support what their requirements were. And it was a bootstrap, and we realized that the pivot would be a lot of effort, and each had some interesting opportunities outside, and we decided to close the startup. But for me, it was an incredible experience of seeing what it means to be an entrepreneur and to, having no one to tell you what to do. You need to constantly learn and iterate. Things
Yeah,
very,
you're
very scrappy
hustling all the time, all
all
the
the
time.
time, multiple hats. But for me, it was amazing. But I think my biggest takeaway from that was that I have no idea how to actually do product design.
Hmm.
So I thought, where can I go and what can I do that I can actually learn and have a better understanding of how do you do product design? This is where I joined Incode as a leading product design agency in Tel Aviv. I've been there for 4 years too, as a product designer, working with dozens of leading startups in Israel, some of them worth billions of dollars today. And after 2 years, I was promoted to be head of design and actually
Wow.
lead the designers at the studio. It was an incredible experience. I must say, it was one of the hardest years of my life. No one teach you how to be a manager, and you suddenly jump in, and I did so many mistakes, so many mistakes. But it was an amazing experience, and I really love the fact of that I can work on multiple projects and I can have a big impact. So I really love the fact, and I really want to grow in the management aspect. This is when I joined Carbine after 4 years at Incode. Joined Carbine. So for me, it's very important to invest my time in companies that do good to the world and have impact. And Carbine mission is to save people's lives. It's actually a product for first responders, for 911 emergency centers, a lot in South America, Central America, and the United States. So I was there for 2 years. And then I had sort of a closure with VIA, because back in 2016, when I was at Incode, VIA was one of our clients. So I worked for VIA as a product designer. So we knew what is happening inside VIA and the amazing company and the people who work here and the mission and also the products. And when I was a designer when I was in Incode, I didn't have much of an influence. I was quite frustrated because I did some sort of this kind of Trello board and things to do, but I didn't have a really impact. And for me, coming back here and leading the design was sort of a closure and a big mission on a personal level. And I absolutely love it. I love the mission, I love the people, and I love the products. Super interesting. And I'm here for 4 years now. Have an incredible team and working on amazing products.
That's really interesting, especially because you started as an entrepreneur. You kind of realized, hey, I know how to hustle, but I don't really know how to build the craft in a way that is top of line for the industry. I should go learn. And so you actually went to a studio, which I've noticed from different colleagues that I've worked with over the years, including when I worked at Microsoft, that actually some of the best designers came from studios. I did the opposite. I worked in corporates for 10 years and then I founded a studio. So I did it a little bit the other way around. But I was always so jealous of the designers that worked at studios because they worked on so many different types of projects. They worked with amazing founders. They worked in this really fast-paced environment. So I would love if you could tell me a little bit more about your studio experience and how you drove value as a vendor, as an outside person to the startups that you were working with, including Via, which you're now the head of design for, many
Yeah.
years later.
Absolutely. It's a good question. And I think the first thing that you have to have in mind is you're actually part of the team. You need to have this kind of entrepreneur mindset that you're working with the founders and you're embedded into their team, into their story. So embedding yourself into this experience and into this project, you actually learning and understanding the story and what they're trying to solve. And when you're in a very early stage, you have no products, you have a story, they've raised money, they have some sort of a very lean MVP that doesn't look good, and now they raise money on that, and now they needed to see how they can bring more clients and actually start scaling the company. So I think having the mindset of you're embedded in the team, you're part of the story, and it requires not only to understand the best practices of product design and how you actually build flows and doing those facilitate work session. By the way, it's a key part of it, being a vendor and working on early stages, facilitating a lot of workshops and working very close to the team in order to actually outline what is the flows, who are the users, because you don't have users at that point. You're doing a lot of guessing. But it's much broader than this. It's about understanding the story, and it's about visuals, and it's about uniqueness and being bold and bringing something different. I think that one of the best advantages of a startup is that sort of a native solution, right? And if we'll think about maybe what is happening right now in the AI world, and you have OpenAI or Claude, which are AI native, I would say, and then you think about Gemini and Google, that they need to embed their AI solution into their product. It's a very different experience. It's not the same. It feels like an add-on patch versus you're going to native product that is focused on AI. So going back to the studio experience, there is a lot of opportunity, but you have also the need. You actually have to tell a story and to bring something that is very unique to what you're bringing and the value that you're bringing. And I think having this in mind helps you to think much more broader about visuals, about what elements are you using, what kind of imagery maybe that supports this kind of message. So it's not just product design. There's a lot of aspects around it that helps. And many times, as the vendor of those startups, you actually need to provide more than just the product design. Hey, help me with the presentation. How does it all fits in? Help me with the brand. And we're not doing brand. And there are people who are doing amazing brand but they just need the package. And I think you need to extend yourself. And for me, many of the challenges that we're facing, my mindset is not limiting myself only to product design. So product design is part of the story, but it's a broader aspect. And I think this is something that is key when you're working as a vendor with founders in early stage. So there's the mindset of being embedded in the team, being part of it, understanding the story, and bringing your angle into this from a design perspective. And the second thing is it's need to be broader than just the product design. And the product design needs to tell a story and to be very unique and appealing and bold to actually make them stand out, especially for the very early stages.
I love what you said. You made a really, really interesting comparison that I want to double down into. You talked about the way that when you were working in a studio, you were very much embedded into the team and you were building from the core. And then you said something about these different AI tools around how it feels kind of like an add-on. It doesn't feel like this core element. And so this is a huge challenge that I want to really put the spotlight on today because it's something that we see so much with companies that were not AI centric, but now have all of this technology and all these tools at their disposal, and they're not really sure how to use it. They're like, okay, we know we can use AI because we can connect to these different APIs because we have tools, but we're not really sure how to do this transformation. And this is actually one of the things that we help companies with, myself who worked at Booking.com's machine learning development center, back in 2017, and who has had a lot of experience building AI-centric products. Josh, another designer who works on our team, who worked in Microsoft MSAI on Copilot products, on General Motors AI dashboards. And what we see with these companies is exactly what you're saying is they're like, yeah, we can do AI, but we don't really know how to do it when it comes to product development. So tell me, Idan, tell me a little bit about your experience now working at Via that wasn't an AI centric company, but is now, from what I understand, to go through this transformation.
I think it's a big challenge for every major product and company that's already being on market and has a strong market fit and a large base of users. People are using your product on a daily basis. And, think about our experience as designers. Imagine that Figma will change and it will add more and more capabilities. You will be pissed, right? You have the way that you work. You're used to this. Stop moving my cheese all the time. And I think that companies need to be very, very minded about how they're making this shift. By the way, I think that Google, I just don't see other way for them to do this. So they have this kind of AI studio that you can go and actually engage with AI products per se, but how they integrating this into their product is very similar to how we're thinking about it. So you cannot shift your product. People are counting on it, they're building on it, and working daily with their product. So for example, we have a lot of users. We have the rider experience, the driver experience, but maybe the one that I want to focus on is the operator side, the dispatchers. The first reservationists are actually setting the plan of how the shift will work today and taking the reservations. They have their workflow, and we need to think very carefully how we're actually adding value that can be driven by AI. And I think one of the main questions that I'm asking the engineering team and the product team is, what is the difference between an AI feature and a good feature? Because many times we're like, yeah, let's do it. So what really drives the motivation here to do AI for the sake of AI, or are we actually bringing value? And AI is an enabler. Is this kind of 10x that we're talking about actually can give you these superpowers? So we're really looking from this angle, and we're trying to think, what is it unlocking? What can we gain that we were not able to do 3 years ago? Or it will cost us 10 times, 100 times more than what we can do today with those MCPs and agents and everything that is now coming that we can actually bring value to users, and also being super minded about how can we actually roll this out and have adoption. So I will give you one example that I find not good. I love Notion. I use Notion all the time, but having this face on the right side, I don't think it's a good example. And why? Because it creates another entry point. So I have my flow. I'm used to work in a certain way, but now maybe there are more capabilities that going on there, and there's a different entry point that is not in my current flow. I need to adapt to it. I'm not sure what is the trigger to go and actually interact with it, rather than actually having this embedded within the flow that I'm used to, that I assume companies are optimizing. The critical user flows need to be constantly optimized. So the question that we are thinking about is not about how can we create more friction in the screen and more entry points. I think more entry points you need to try to avoid or to be very cautious to add those, but to understand how the flow would work, how they're working today, and how can you leverage it and add more capabilities on it that will help them to do their work more efficiently. And this is how we're thinking about this. I'm not sure that currently what I'm seeing with Google is there. I think it's still many times an add-on, or you need to have a different, intent to access this area. But this is what this is what we're thinking about. How can we add those capabilities and be very smart of how we use it and bring value, not for the sake of AI. Having said this, Ali,
I want to double down on one thing you said and call it out in case people didn't hear it. You said, we need to think about how we can use AI to optimize the product consumption experience, more or less, as opposed to just using AI for the sake of AI. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles that companies have today is there's so much FOMO. And you said this really well when we spoke offline. You're like, there's so much FOMO, there's so much anxiety. And I want to emphasize that word anxiety because I think every listener here, especially the designers, is feeling it. Am I going to get replaced? How is AI going to affect the way we do product development? Do I know enough about AI to actually integrate it in a meaningful way? So we need to think about exactly what you said. Is this actually adding value? Is this something that's going to streamline the process to make our users more successful, more happy, more able to go from point A to point B and execute these tasks, as opposed to the Notion example you used, which was brilliant, which is like, okay, I have this AI assistant, but you're right. I never use Notion AI. I don't really need it with the product, at least not now, because it doesn't add enough value. So I just love that. And I wanted everyone listening to really hear that, to calm their anxiety and say, hey, it's great. It's an amazing tool. We've seen so many leaps and strides in the last 5, 6 years, and especially in the last 2, 3 years when LLMs have become really mainstream, but there's still very much a need for that human factor. So I think that's where you were getting, Idan, and I want to let you continue on that path. Let's talk about more about that human factor. Where does that fit in?
right. See this coming from two different directions. One of them is the value that you can have in the product that your user will benefit. This is one, and I think this is where we need to be very careful. I think as designers, especially product designers in the tech industry, there's a lot going on. We're part of this major shift that is happening, and we constantly need to learn and to test and to explore. This is one thing. And what is really important for me and also for my team to explore is constantly think about how do we get to value in the most efficient way with the most certainty and validation? Those are the questions. And there is all the design process. You ideate, you do research, you talk with users, you do prototypes, a regular process. How do you make it much more efficient with the new tools in hand? So there are two things here. One, the value of AI inside the product that we need to be very cautious about and think about the impact. Second thing, internally, as designers, how do we work and how do we improve our work process? I see this as two different. So for the user perspective, I think we need to be very careful because many users are not that tech savvy, and maybe having this kind of big leap could be frightening or unclear and create even anxiety for them, which is the last thing that we want to do. For user, we want them to feel as comfortable as possible and have the highest level of trust in our product. So we need to be very careful and to see how we can adding more value, and it's easier for them. But internally, this is where it's really, really moving the cheese or moving, how we think and how we work. So I will start to say I don't have clear answers. Things are moving very fast. Every week we're waking into more tools, more updates, and it's really hard to keep track on everything that is going on. But it's important to explore. And I think that the mindset that we need to have as designers, and also what I'm encouraging in my team, is what are we currently doing that we can do better with the current tools that we have? So how can I create prototypes that are more realistic? Let's start even from the beginning. As designers, we need to communicate our decisions, why this is the solution. And as designers, we are the one who's mostly getting picked on, and everyone has opinion. So how can you bring those strong conviction and pros and cons for your solution? So imagine that you have this kind of mega superstar UX designer mentor on your shoulder that can really help you, and think that you can train this kind of mentor with a lot of data going online with different products and bring the best practices and actually have constant design review.
Is this something you do? Is this something you do?
This is something that we're looking into that I would love to embed as part of the process. I spend meaningful part of my week in design crates with working with a design team. And I love it. But I think that the designers that are coming to this design critique can be more crisp in their approach and their thinking process. And I think this kind of tool could really help.
I've never heard of this before. You are the first, and I talk to many design leaders and entrepreneurs and designers all day, every day. I have never heard of someone actually using the AI to mentor designers. I've always heard about it the other way around, and they're using it for inspiration, but I have never heard about it the other way around. So that is super interesting because that is such a fresh approach to thinking about it. So I actually want to deep dive there because I think that the way you're thinking about that is very much, excuse the obvious here, a co-pilot for designers, for product teams. So how did you think about that? How did that come to be? And ultimately, how is your team reacting to it?
What is talent? For me, talent, and being very high level, you can talk about this for hours, but talent is the combination of thinking and an experience and having the right questions or an open mind to explore and to think, and the execution. So the thinking and the execution, and we're talking a lot about the generative AI. So the execution is there, but what about the thinking? And thinking is part of what AI can bring. So it's 10x not only for the velocity, it's also for the thinking and the ability to be a better designer. Because now you have someone, this kind of mentor, that can bring a lot of value and a lot of understanding into your process, can help you to crisp and sharpen your design and thinking, and to help you communicate why this is the right decision, and also to be the devil advocates, why this is not good, and really come prepared. And I think from a leadership perspective, I always want to hear the downside, right? Nothing is perfect. So if you bring a solution, what is the downside? And I think it's very important. And sometimes we push for something, but it's really hard to buy into something without having someone actually acknowledging what are the downsides of their approach. And I think this is where it could be really helpful, and to also bring a lot of psychology layers. So design and design practices, but what about a lot of psychology layers that could really help understand why this decision can improve engagement, can improve adoption, how they can increase delightfulness, and retention, and everything that we want to do to see in our metrics. And I think many of the decisions should bring those aspects into the design review. And this is where it could really help. Then, if you think more into the design process, then, okay, what about validation? What about prototyping, testing it with users? So ideally, we would have a product, an actual product that they can work with. So how can we bridge the gap of having this endless hours of building in Figma and then prototyping it, and the interactivity is very, very limited, especially when you think about VIA, and we work with timelines to have the plan set up, and we're working a lot with maps. So how do you prototype on that? It's super hard. So this is where it's getting really interesting. And we have a lot of innovative ideas about how can transportation be in the next few years, and it's not trivial. So we're sort of paving the way, and we don't have validation. So prototyping and testing is key in order to make sure that we're making the right decision. And many of the decisions that me and my team are making is really high stakes. There's tons of development going into this for very important partners, clients. So it's a high stake. So we need to have the best tools to have this kind of validation that we're on the right path, and user understanding and adopting, and actually finding this experience more productive and efficient for them.
Wow, that's super interesting. Like I said, it's not something that I've heard before. You kind of hear everyone going down the same path and thinking about integrating AI into in the same way. And what you're proposing is almost opposite to what we think, but it's very smart. And I'm curious, and you'll have to keep me up to date. Is it working? Because I know you're just in the beginning stages of implementing this, of training the models, of doing this with your team. So definitely keep us updated. I want to put a pin in that for a second because I actually want to shift to your work at VIA specifically. We went around it a bit, but not everyone knows what VIA is, and not everyone knows the terms that you're using. So I want to make this a bit educational, and I want to help people understand the context of what you do. So in a couple words, can you tell us what is VIA?
Absolutely. First of all, VIA has a very large mission of improving and reimagining how transportation works. Basically, VIA invented back in 2012 the concept of microtransit, which is a shared ride which is on demand. So it's between having a taxi like an Uber or Lyft and a fixed route, a bus or a tram, train, or whatever you have in your city. So it's a shared ride. It's the cost is usually cheap. It's a bit more expensive than public transportation, but it's much cheaper from ordering a taxi or Uber or Lyft. So you're getting from point A to point B by ordering this van, which the experience is very similar to how you would book a ride on Uber or Lyft. But then it's a shared ride, so you have more people joining this ride, and so it might take you longer. Maybe some of them are going the same way as you are. But the price is making this very, very effective. But what VIA is doing is not only providing this service, it's also thinking about in a much broader way of how do we integrate into the urban landscape or even rural
Mm.
landscape and then connecting it to the urban landscape by actually providing the smart transportation that can help pick up people from different areas that have fixed route maybe one time in an hour, maybe one time in 3 hours, and actually bringing them into the main transportation routes. So you actually connecting very large metropolises into the main areas, and this has a huge effect on people's lives in terms of getting into healthcare treatments, getting into their opening job opportunities where they couldn't go before that. So there is a very deep strategic thinking about how we actually elevate and transform the transportation globally. We are working in over 500 cities worldwide, all over the globe.
US, Europe,
Mainly
Asia.
US
Okay.
and Europe, all the big cities that you can think of. And we have actually now we have three main product lines. We have microtransit, which is what I've shared with you. We have also paratransit, which is for people with disabilities. And like for someone who's been actually experiencing these rides for a few times and actually joining people with disabilities and elderly, it's just incredible the pride that I take of working in this company and actually seeing the impact that we're doing, that people actually rely on our technology to actually manage their life. So it's amazing. Currently, then the third one is student transportation. So all the Department of Education, for example, in New York, so all the yellow buses are being supported by our technology. So there's a huge opportunity, and it's really, really exciting to see how we can actually shift and reimagine how transportation works.
Super, super interesting. First of all, I had no idea. I have heard of VIA for many, many years. I've probably been familiar with the company for 8 years. And I'm ashamed to say I didn't even know where you operated. I've heard different terms like bubble, maybe.
I will say that mainly the main reason that people don't know is because we sell our technology or operations. So we actually run the entire operation, or we sell our technology to
So you
existing
power
agencies.
other transportation
Exactly,
companies,
exactly.
like
So
the
it's
yellow
under
buses. So
exactly. So
cool.
it's under their brand, and you can see on the van it's powered by VIA. But we're not a B2C company. We used to be. We operated in New York, in Chicago, in Washington, in many other cities, including Tel Aviv. But we're no longer there. We're working with governments and companies selling our technology and helping the operation side.
First of all, it's kind of like an American staple. I grew up in the US and like going on the school bus as a kid, that's just part of it. But what you're actually doing is you're creating this B2B technology where now infrastructure that has already existed, city buses, school buses, like you called it, micro transportation, paratransportation. Wow, that's incredible to be able to allow people with disabilities and the elderly who can't drive or don't have full-time caretakers to actually take them to these places. That's so important. That's such important work. And I imagine, just kind of again, extending the idea of what you guys are doing to the topic of our talk today is you definitely need optimization for that. So I imagine you've actually been using machine learning and for those of you in the audience that don't know, machine learning is actually an application of AI. So I imagine you've been using machine learning for many, many years to make sure the product is streamlined in the way it's needed to be. So tell me, how has the company gone from using machine learning, using a lot of these artificial intelligence tools to optimize the product to now this new wave of AI, these LLMs? So please define that for us as well. How has that shift gone from the traditional machine learning AI practices you've had to these new wave of technology, LLMs, MCPs, and everything that will come, I'm sure, in the very, very near future as this digital transformation with AI is taking place?
Right. So I will say foremost, the main people who are working on this are the folks on Algo, who are just brilliant. We have one of the best people doing Algo here at VIA. I think this is our secret sauce, and the level of calculation that they need to do and the complexity of it is just unimaginable, the level of complexity. Think about how many calculations you need to do in order to have a requested pickup time and drop off time, and then having more people coming in that are changing the routes. They have pickup and drop off time. Think about multiplying this in 8. Think about multiplying this in 50 vans that are operating at one time and how you manage this operation. It's just, in a nutshell, it's insane the level of algorithm and calculation goes into this, and we really have incredible and brilliant people doing this. And I think that what is happening right now, it really affects in terms of our architecture. And we're thinking a lot about our architecture and how it fits in and how can it's actually be used in different areas of our different products. I cannot go into too much about this. I'll say for one reason I cannot. The second thing, I don't have the deep understanding and knowledge exactly what those magicians are doing there. But it's constantly in discussion about how can we elevate this more. But VIA is working with machine learning and algo from day one. This is basically what we do. People who founded the company are coming from this background and they're just brilliant. So there is a very deep layer of machine learning and AI and algorithm going on to actually enable these crazy services at scale. What I can say from a product and design perspective is that we work a lot and very close with Algo, because many of the things that we need to do in order to provide a good experience, we need to have answers coming from Algo, what we can do, what we cannot do, what are the calculations that can be done in X amount of time to actually present to users, what can we load, because there's so many data coming in. So we're working very, very closely with them. I think looking ahead, vision-wise, it could really help us doing simulation. Maybe it could really help snappiness and maybe working even faster at scale. And we're scaling. We have thousands of rides in different cities a day, and even 10,000s of rides a day. Think about this globally. So those are massive numbers, and there's a lot of compute power to support it. So it's definitely there. It's, from me and for the product and design team, we interact with them a lot to help us to define and to see what could really help users and what can we get from them. And I think this is where also those connection could really help in terms of empowering our designs to actually show maybe real data and maybe do calculation of those prototypes to actually present what looks like real data before maybe we even launch. So there's a lot of opportunity here, but we need to dive more into this.
I wanna actually double down into something you said, which I can really relate to, but I want to hear from your experience. You said there's all this technology happening. You work really, really closely with the algorithm team, and you as designers, you have to represent that graphically, right, through UI to the users. So can you give me one specific example of a situation where you worked really closely with the algorithm team and yet your predictions were maybe mispredicted or misrepresented in the UI and how you dealt with that? What was some of your learnings from that experience?
I think, first of all, I will say that the mindset is very different. They're thinking in calculations and math problems. And it's really different from us that we think about what can we do that will make the users have the best experience. And there is sometimes, many times, a big gap between what we imagine that would be the best experience and easiest to what is actually feasible. And I think this is where the conversation needs to come very early in the process in order to actually set expectations on what is actually feasible. It's not just algo, it's also in terms of architecture. So I'll give you one example. One of the biggest innovation that VIA brings to the world is what we call intermodality, which means it's a combination of on-demand, like microtransit, the VIA ride that picks you from point A to point B, to a fixed route. So imagine that you're in Tel Aviv and you need to go to Haifa. Give me an example.
I'm in San Francisco and I need to go to Palo Alto for a work meeting that comes up last minute. My driver's license is expired, which by the way it is. And I don't have anywhere else to go. I don't have any other way to get there. How do I get from San Francisco to Palo Alto?
Great example. So imagine that from San Francisco, you're taking the on-demand into a train or to the fixed route that takes you. So it takes you to this bus station, and then from there you're taking the fixed route. You're getting into Palo Alto, and then you have a van waiting for you, or you need to wait for it for a few minutes to take you to your drop-off. So imagine this trip without VIA. It will take you a fixed route or taking a car, and then waiting to another. So it's much, much, much more efficient. And
Or I
making this
take a Uber and it costs me $150 to get down there, which I don't want to
exactly.
do. So how else do I do it? Idan, tell me how.
Exactly. So this is the exact example that what you described. So you can be very inefficient on fixed route, but the price will be low. Or you can take an Uber or Lyft, then the price will be super high, but it will be very efficient. So this is what we're trying to solve. And you think about this at scale, especially for people who maybe cannot afford on daily basis to order this on-demand rides all the time. This is where it's becoming super, super valuable. And in our algorithms, we need to calculate. Think about, again, a van that you have like 5 people with this route. How can you actually make sure that we're on time to pick you up and then on time to bring you to the fixed route that then goes to Palo Alto? Then from there, you have a van that is waiting for you. So there's a lot of calculation going on here and many variants that is happening. And I think one of the biggest challenges at VIA is, unlike pure SaaS products, so imagine like, I don't know, imagine Spotify, right? So it have physical aspect. It's only working on your phone or on your laptop. But VIA is sort of a service design because you're ordering on your phone, but it's actually a van coming in to pick you up. And then you have traffic lights, and then there is traffic, and then another passenger comes in. So there's a lot of things that are changing along the way. So to make sure that you can actually get to your drop-off to your destination at time, there's a lot of calculation going on.
And it's
So
also very emotional, right? It's stressful getting to a
it's
meeting,
very
getting to a
emotional.
doctor's appointment, traffic, feeling like you're not in control. So how are these things, back to the original question, like when a misprediction happened from the algo side, from the, back end data AI side to what the user actually sees tangibly on the UI? Like, can you give me an example of when that happened and what did you do about it?
Right. So again, there are 2 things coming in here. So first of all, for us as product design, engineering, algo, we need to think about all the use cases and how can we actually give a very good proposal that has high probability of actually being completed. So this is a lot of thinking that is going on, and this is where algo discussion coming in to actually see what is feasible and what we can actually bring and propose to our users that can actually work. Avoid having frustrating experience. Then once we providing this proposal and actually choosing it, how can we mitigate the risk and concern during this trip when there's so many legs and there are a lot of changes that can happen along the way? And this is where product and design is key. And I think that there are a few ways. First of all, we acknowledge that they're not in their app all the time. So they've ordered a ride and now they're going to, I don't know, go into TikTok or listen to news, but they're not there. So how can we constantly show them? So you have 2 ways. One of them is have this kind of live activity and have a really good visualization that show them where they are currently in the flow and in their trip and their journey. Second thing is you need to have notification that indicates if something has changed. This is where also copy is crucial. How can you bring the right message that gives confidence and call to action if needed, or just show them, hey, everything is on plan, enjoy your ride, something like this. If there is something is happening, and if they go into the app, they have the ability to declare, I'm late, and we advance giving them the insurance that they won't be charged for the second leg if something happens. So in a way, we're also reducing the risk of actually taking those proposals. So in a way, they took part of the ride, but it's not ideal because we want them to have the end-to-end journey to get from point A to their destination. But we also want to give this kind of guardrails that says if there's something that's happened, because we know that things can change, we don't have control of what's happening on the outside in the real world. So you also need to know that if there is any risk, if there's any problem, we'll be able to have your back and to support you. So it's communication. It's constantly giving clarity and communication that things are on track and where things are at now, right now, so you'll be ready. So giving this confidence. And second thing is to also give the assurance that if something happens, we're here, and you will cancel, and we'll help you to find a different alternative.
Okay, well, that's really great because you use the word guardrails. And that's something that, back when I worked at booking.com, we talked about all the time, right? How do you manage mispredictions? How do you create guardrails? And you said it really well because in this environment where it's high stakes, it's high stress, you have to get to this business meeting, you have to get to this doctor's appointment, you have to move on with your life. And yet the algorithm team, who's sitting in a totally different part of the world is basically controlling your destiny. So how do you have trust that if something goes wrong, if something happens, your technology, your app, and the people behind it designing are actually taking care of you, easing that anxiety, easing that discomfort, and ultimately creating a world where you are supported. So, I want to close us out here with one strong message that you might have to designers that are working with AI, that are working with machine learning, that are working in these high stakes environments. What would you suggest if you had one message to designers, product managers, engineers that are working in similar or tangential type of products? What would you tell them in order to optimize the experience for their users?
I would start with defining what would be the best experience that we can deliver and then break it down from there to understand what is feasible. And I think it's very important. It might sound trivial, but I think it's very important to define where you want to go and to have an alignment of what we define as product, as design, as engineers, as algo, to be the experience that we want to provide, and also have leadership buy-in, obviously. And then to actually understand what is an MVP that brings this value to the closest level as possible that we can actually ship. And when you have this in mind, how can and again, there's a lot of tech complexity going into this to make sure that you can actually go into the ideal product that you want to have. So what are the tools that you can use in order to help to mitigate risk or to push for this ideal experience that you're looking for in a way that maybe is not leaning heavily on tech or on development? So this is where copy comes in. This is where notification comes in. Just referencing to the example that I gave, that could help to give this kind of trust and certainty to users. But I think it's very, very important to know where you're heading and what you want to build in order to make sure that you're on that path and you're building towards that. And you have an understanding of, even if you're limited in terms of time and resources to this MVP that may be a bit far from what the ideal that you want to have, still, what other efforts you can have in order to bring it a little bit up?
What are the top 3 AI-based tools that you are using today or that you recommend?
Well, it's a hard one. There's so many out there, and I think some of them are good for different things. So you always have your go-to, which I think is the ChatGPT or Claude. It really depends. Sometimes when I have this long articles that I'm writing or this kind of documentation, I think that sometimes Claude is doing a much better work than ChatGPT. So I don't really know, and many times I'm trying both, and they're constantly improving. So it's really hard, So I think those are the ones I use on a daily basis. I use Notion a lot because this is where I manage my documentation, and I use their AI to actually improve
Okay.
writing, and it really helped me. So I'm also using Notion AI, but this is great for documentation. I love art and design, and I think Midjourney, especially V7 coming up, always incredible as for designer. I think exploring and bring this kind of creativity splash back is amazing. Lastly, in terms of this kind of builders, I would say so you have a few which are great. I think that maybe today maybe both
Mm,
is really good. I was quite disappointed from Lovable, even with the
okay.
latest update. And there's also V0, but the one problem that I find with V0 is that everything is very, very similar. I think they're just building based on one design system. I would say that main message will be keep your eyes on the ball, see what's coming up, constantly test, explore, iterate, but do this with purpose. Don't just play and prompt for the sake of prompting. Think about what you actually need to solve.
Okay, so you heard it here first. Prompt with purpose. From Idan. Idan, exactly, exactly. TM, underline it. You heard it here first. So, Idan, if people listening to this want to get in touch with you and want to learn more about some of the topics that you're talking about, what is the best way for them to do so?
I think LinkedIn will be great.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a conversation. I learned some new things, two in particular. One, all about thinking about using AI in actually a different way to almost be a mentor as opposed to just a source of inspiration. And Bolt and V0 actually haven't used those two yet. So I'm going to definitely get to it, add it to the list, and make sure I start exploring it. Have a great day and talk to you soon.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
Dan.
Bye bye.
Bye.